what do we really want tech to do for us? And where do the business opportunities lie when it comes to technology? To help us to explore the world of tech, fraud and hacking a whole lot better, we have Jan Vermeulen on the line with us. Jan is the editor for mybroadband.co.za. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me on.
No worries. When it comes to the way we see technology today, how have we evolved with the times and grown with technology?
Well, that's a deep, interesting question, because there's no doubt in my mind that platforms like Facebook, Twitter, even YouTube have fundamentally changed the way we interact. And I don't just mean the fact that we now use a computer to talk to people that are, perhaps geographically much further removed from us than it used to be able to communicate with people at that speed. I mean, it went from, perhaps the letter that could take months to deliver by ship to telegraphs, and then to email, and now social media. What I mean by that is that it's fundamentally changed the way we interact with one another. And for good or evil, these platforms just change the way we speak to one another. Yeah. And one sees that especially in arguments, when you tend to have two polarizing sides shouting one another down, especially on a platform like Twitter. Facebook, of course, infamous for creating echo chambers. So where Twitter is a place where you might have disagreement, very, very animated disagreement. Facebook is a place where you cultivate agreement, because you tend to, create a circle of friends that would agree with you on the platform, rather than disagree with you. So it's an interesting time, and honestly, I don't think any of us have it really figured out. The platforms themselves clearly don't have it figured out. That's part of the market cap knock to Facebook. They've blamed the general data protection laws in the European Union, but part of it is also investors getting spooked by Facebook's guidance, and Facebook saying that it's going to be taking steps to deal with the problems on the platform, whether that's privacy, whether that's the quality of discourse, and that's going to cost money and time, and investors were quite spooked by that.
Jan, I'm actually very glad that you started off on the point of interaction. Now, in your opinion, how has social media made us be more antisocial?
Well, that's I don't know that I agree with that statement, but it in some ways it has, and some ways it hasn't. Obviously, it hasn't made us more antisocial, because we interact with far more. If you're active on social media, you interact with far more people, and you have the opportunity to interact with a far more diverse set of people, provided, this is the big one, they have internet access, and are able to afford the data costs to interact on those platforms. But still, the fact is, you can interact with far more different people than you would have been able to, just 20 years ago. But antisocial, and I don't know if there's a better word for it, but certainly in this context, in the sense that it's made the quality of the discourse, in my not so humble opinion, poorer. It would be very interesting to be able to measure that. But it certainly from the kind of stuff that we see in media, the kind of interactions that you can go and look for yourself on Twitter, where in the past perhaps one might have tried to find common ground and work from there, and try to understand the differences that people might have on two sides of a debate. It's just two sides shouting at one another, refusing to budge, and people who seek common ground are just lumped with the enemy. So it's actually something that makes me quite sad in that respect, when it comes to the quality of interaction on some of these platforms, and Twitter in particular have said that they really want to try and address that. Obviously, they've had issues of harassment on the platform, and that's been a core issue for them to address, but also to deal with one of the problems they have is these platforms being hijacked by interests, whether those interests are corporate or institutional or governmental, political, to push some kind of agenda. In South Africa, we saw that with Bell Pottinger and White Monopoly Capital, for example. The United States saw it with the 2016 presidential election. And so in dealing with these problems, they also, two birds with one stone kind of thing, deal with the quality of the discourse and what kind of information gets bubbled to the top. And so Twitter, in particular, said that they're working on a way to get, when people are looking for stuff about a particular topic, that subject matter experts get bubbled to the top of those searches, regardless of where they fall on a particular debate, regardless of the opinion that they hold, that those voices tend to be prioritized over, just a random one-post wonder egg account, as they're known. And so it's a difficult problem to crack, but these platforms are working on it.
So just quickly, yes or no, you think that social media is not opening this door of people becoming antisocial, in your opinion, yes or no?
No, I don't think it's making us antisocial, but I think it's making us less tolerant of opposing views, and I think it is creating echo chambers. People tend to find others that they agree with, and they reinforce their existing biases instead of seeking out views that might challenge their own.
I'm finding it very difficult to believe that, because working in schools myself, going around certain areas, going to schools and seeing youngsters sitting in a circle and they basically chatting to each other, not verbally, but via their cell phones. We have lots of SMSs, WhatsApps, messages coming through via text, and sometimes it's very hurtful messages to hosts because people are finding it easy that they are able to hide behind their technology. Yes. But if we invite them to call us, they are finding it far more difficult to do that because it's easy for them to hide behind the technology, but it's not really easy for them to verbalize what they want to say, that you suck as a presenter, that you as a radio station, you suck, but they're able to do it by hiding behind the technology. Are we not seeing a lot of people hiding their true selves by sitting in a dark room somewhere and writing these hurtful messages and starting things such as cyberbullying?
Right, and that's a very good and very important point. So you definitely have that. Obviously, I think we've both experienced that, where people basically hide from the accountability of what they have to say by remaining anonymous, or by standing two steps away and going, no, you can't call me to challenge me on this. Basically, I'm going to say this thing on social media, but you are not allowed to challenge me on it. That is my view, and my opinion is sacred. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. But I mean, as even our Constitution points out, rights come with responsibilities. Yes, you have the freedom of expression, you have the right to freedom of speech, but that comes with the ability for someone to disagree with you and challenge you, and certainly we see that effect on social media. It's a curious one, but I don't think it's unique to social media. There have always been people who are uncomfortable with conflict, but who are very comfortable at giving their own inflammatory opinions, and then kind of run away when they get challenged. But the flip side of that is there are also many people who, as you say, find it very difficult to do what we're doing right now, which is just to speak, to articulate the words in their head and speak them on the fly. There are people, who would get stage fright or some kind of other anxiety when they are required to speak up. What the internet has provided there as a form of textual communication. Obviously, there's multimedia platforms now as well, like YouTube, where you can pre-record a message and upload it, which is perhaps a different discussion. But it's enabled people who do have that kind of anxiety to also have a voice. And I've seen also people who have that kind of stage fright, who have that kind of anxiety, who are not afraid to have their opinions challenged, and they're incredibly effective communicators through text, through online interaction, and are happy to debate an issue that way. But if you put them in front of a camera, if you put them on a phone, if you put them in a live debate, they shut down. They're not nearly as effective. And so it's a double-edged sword. One has to take the good with the bad there. Well, I say one has to take it, but I think that there is good and bad there, and there are ways that we're going to have to minimize the bad, because unfortunately the internet has allowed those bad elements to be amplified tremendously. So where previously, you might share an opinion, and you might get flack from it from one or two people, it is now possible for someone to retweet that opinion, for example, expose it to an audience without context, and suddenly you're getting flamed from thousands and thousands of people all over the world, who just want a good old pile on, because human beings are simple-minded creatures like that sometimes.
We're chatting to the editor of mybroadband.co.za, Jan Vermeulen, and we're talking about what we really want out of technology. And it is really extraordinary, Jan, how much financial fraud takes place at every level, and technology is making it so much easier for scamsters and criminals to get into my finances and your finances, everybody else's finances. Now, where is technology failing when it comes to eliminating financial fraud?
So in many places, unfortunately. So I think a hacker would say, show me any system and I'll show you a way to break it. And that's part of the challenge of it. That's part of the love of it. But then unfortunately you have these once again bad elements who do the exact same thing but for nefarious purposes. And so where the failings are is actually usually the human element. So you can build the most secure system, but if there's a human interaction required, and right now there's no real way to get rid of that, right? There's a human that has to input a password or something to that effect, and so there's always a way for an attacker to exploit that, to either trick a human to give up their credentials and usernames, passwords, pins, that sort of thing, and then basically masquerade as that user in the system, or find other technical weaknesses. So it's not just that there might be bugs and other security flaws in a system. The element that especially financial fraudsters typically attack from the data I've seen are humans. They through phishing attacks, they try to trick you into giving up your banking password, and then to do the SIM swap fraud, they would either find a person on the inside to extort, or they might cozy up to someone at a cell phone shop and look over their shoulder as they're typing a password so that they can get their password so that they can do a fraudulent SIM swap. And so it might not be so to answer your question directly, where technology is failing us, I guess, is saving us from ourselves, really.
Jan, before we end off, when it comes to technology today, it seems like we are very spoilt for choice. If we look at our cell phones, for example, we are able to do so much more with it than what it was once intended for. Before, it was just a thing that you can take or make a phone call with on the move. Now, what do we really want out of technology? And that comes to the crux of the theme of this conversation. That's why I asked to speak to you. What do we really want out of technology?
Yeah, so that's actually a difficult question for a techie like me to answer, but maybe more for a psychologist. But if I were to hazard a guess, I'd say like at its root, just something that makes our lives easier, and that those tend to be the killer features that that sell cell phones. And not just make lives easier, but also can make lives better. So a camera on a phone, for example, might not make your life easier, except in the sense that you no longer have to carry around a compact camera to capture moments that you want to capture. You've got it right in your pocket. But it certainly, I would argue, makes people's lives better. And so that's why we now have cameras on our phones. And why it's such a killer feature, and why we have mobile internet connections right in our phones. It's something that makes people's lives better. And I think that's essentially what we want from technology. We want something that's going to make our lives easier, going to make our lives better, going to improve the quality of our lives and the people around us. That's what people have historically been paying for, is that killer feature. Does it make my life better? So, yeah, I think that at its root is what people are looking for.
Lastly, Jan, how much more do you think our cell phones are still going to evolve? I was listening to someone the other day and they said cell phones have basically everything beside the kitchen sink. And it's the truth. We can make videos, we can take pictures, we can record good quality audio. You can even download apps where you can do podcasts directly from your phone, wherever you find yourself. If you have good internet access, you can broadcast live radio on the internet. How much more, in your opinion, do you think our cell phones are still going to evolve?
Yeah, it all depends on the challenges we face as a species going forward, I think. So whatever challenge comes up that a piece of technology can solve, as some innovator is going to come up with it, and if he can put that in a phone, then they will. But that said, still a lot, to answer your question directly. There's a lot of room for innovation still in phones, and incremental stuff like making batteries last longer, making the internet connections faster, making them less latent, improving ping times and such. But also, making them more convenient to access. So we started seeing experiments like that, with comfortable eyewear like Google Glass as opposed to heavy headsets. But eventually to the point where maybe they're more integrated into what we wear and into our bodies even perhaps. Than having to fish something out of your pocket, and so we're starting to see that evolution with wearables. So I for example don't have to fish my phone out of my pocket to see an SMS or a message, a WhatsApp that just come in. I can just look at my wrist and quickly decide whether I need to deal with it immediately or not. And so we'll see, I think, more evolutions like that, things that make it so that it's even less cumbersome to use. Not that it's cumbersome right now. That's the whole point, right? That's why we love them and why we use them. So make them so there's a lot, I think, that's still going to happen. And I think like now, if we look back 20 years at where the mobile phone has come from, in 20 years' time, if we look back, the cell phones that we have right now might look like, those old sling phone, Nommerasseblief style things that were used on farms back in the day. Well, everywhere, not just farms back in the day, but everywhere. So I think it's surprising what a difference 10 or 20 years can make in the world of technology. So there's a lot still to come.